Hey all, here OS Reviews. Today we're taking a closer look at the Monolith by Monoprice M-TWE. These are a pair of TWS wireless buds which sell for under $100, and they claim to pack in quite a few flagship grade features for the price, including active noise cancellation, but more importantly, support for a companion app that is developed by Sonarworks called SoundID. So it claims to be an app that allows you to tune the way that these buds will sound according to your hearing. So it does a hearing test, and it will compensate for areas that you aren't able to maybe hear as much of the sound by tweaking up the volume, changing the way that the mids, bass, and treble sound depending on your preferences. So custom EQ. The thing is, it's a collaboration where the manufacturer of the buds, called Monoprice, is just responsible for making the hardware, but the app that's called SoundID is actually developed by another company, Sonarworks. The software is actually used by artists as well in studios just to get a very precise listening experience that's as close to the real sound as possible. And one interesting observation though is the shape reminds me a lot of the Smart Apollos, which we checked out a while back, and these were another pair of TWS wireless buds with this circular design for the tips. Not sure if they're getting the buds themselves from a similar maybe location or factory, but it's really just the software in this case that is setting it apart. Using Bluetooth 5.0 and has the latest Qualcomm chipset, so it supports aptX as well as SBC and AAC, and also has up to 10 hours of playtime per charge for the buds, and then with the battery case combined, you get an extra 20 hours with the case. So in total, around 30 hours when you're on the road. And these also have touch controls that allow you to do things like change the volume directly on them just by swiping up and down. So they use gestures for navigation. So again, it's basically a touchpad. You can swipe up and swipe down to raise it higher or lower, or just tap once to cycle through the different A and C modes, including turning it on, off, or having a transparency mode that magnifies the noise around you so you can hear what's going on without removing these. Inside of this, we do have another small box that we can flip open to have access to the Monolith wireless buds, which we'll take a closer look at in a second. And then down below here, it is presented very well. We have the extra accessories, including separate compartments for a soft carrying pouch. So this is actually a cloth-based pouch that you can use to protect the buds and then fit it into here when you're traveling. It's also where you'll find access to a USB Type-C charging cable. A separate mini box here contains the adjustable sizes for the tips, giving you plenty of options since a seal is very important for wireless buds. Last but not least, we have just a quick user guide that tells you how to download the companion app from SoundID. Taking a closer look at the design of the battery case, it is very premium feeling since the entire body here is actually constructed out of aluminum alloy and metal, so it feels cold and solid to the touch. It does have a Type-C port on the back here for charging, although because it is made of metal, it does mean that the battery case doesn't support Qi wireless charging. The top surface here is also very glossy and reflective, and it is a bit of a fingerprint magnet, but does have a very interesting look as a result. The hinge here opens quite easily, and once it's opened, the buds will basically begin to connect and pair. They will still be very easy to pop back into the case for quickly charging them up, and there's a small LED indication light that also will flash when they are being charged. So removing these and taking a closer look at the design, as aforementioned, the buds are quite similar or have strong resemblance to the Smart Apollo Bolds that we saw. These do also have an ambient light sensor on them. As you can see there, they're infrared, so they can detect if you're wearing the buds or not. So whenever you pop these out of your ears, the music can also automatically pause and resume when you pop them back in. And a very ergonomic shape, so they felt quite secure when you're wearing them without falling loose. Even if I was jogging around or moving around, they still felt locked in. And then with the battery case itself, they're going to be also a little bit thicker compared to the AirPods, but not by too much, even though these have a lot of functionality packed in, so they're still quite easy to put into a pocket when you're traveling. Here they are next to another competitor that is quite similar feature-wise from the folks over at Anker, Liberty Air 2 Pros, which also were quite popular recently. These do have ANC as well, and Anker's wireless buds also come with support for a companion app that they've developed themselves that gives you a hearing test. So the functionality of the software on Anker's buds is quite similar to what is being promised here by Monoprice through their collaboration with SoundID. Except SoundID here claims to have more professional sound engineers and a team behind it that has more expertise with tuning headphones. Since the companion app is so heavily advertised, let's take a closer look at it. 45 plus Grammy award-winning engineers, Now jumping inside, the application here is very slick. I have to say the user interface is perhaps one of the most beautiful I've seen for a headphone companion app. It's just so beautiful in terms of its fonts. It almost reminds me of Windows Phone in terms of how bold it is with the colors. And there is impressive attention to detail here where you can even change the colors of the accents of the app depending on your preferences. So right now it says that we've connected to the Monolith by Monoprice, and there's also a before and after that shows you prior to tuning it with their custom EQ. This is basically the way that the drivers sounded like on these buds, so it has almost a V-shaped experience, so emphasizing bass and trebles, but after the software that they are applying to these headphones, it can be optimized to become completely neutral, for example, so that it will be as the artist intended a sound to be like, almost like if you're in the live environment. It goes through a few different demo songs that will accentuate different parts of the music as well as the different frequencies and genres, and you can hear the effect with it enabled versus when it's turned off, and it's a pretty noticeable / obvious difference. With it turned on, everything becomes a lot more almost three-dimensional, for lack of a better word. You can also try and search or add new headphones from other brands, and some of them can also be found under this long list sorted by different manufacturers. So the Monolith by Monoprice is one of the more specialized options that you can find in the list directly, but other larger names like One More or B&O you can probably also tap on to try and find a pair, and it can perform a similar trick once connecting to it if it is a popular enough pair of headphones. So this default EQ adjustment is made by the sound engineers themselves after testing out the hardware of these buds. They've actually tuned them through this collaboration. But again, you can also personalize it to your tastes by going to the main menu and then going over to the My Test section. And from here, you're able to do a quick sound preference test, and it will fit you into a category depending on if you like bass more, do you like mids more, or do you like trebles more. And how it does this is doing a quick listening test. So if I tap on start, it will take about 1 minute, and it will play back a series of sounds and tell you to tap on, do you prefer the effect of sound A or sound B? This test will allow it to tailor the sound specific to your tastes, and it is, again, very slick interface. Once it's done, it'll basically process it and then upload the new EQ mode over to the headphones. It will work as long as we have the app open in the background. We can also go to YouTube, go to Spotify, playback anything, and they will use the custom EQ running through the app and pushed over to the buds. There's additional more advanced hearing tests that you can do, by the way. So the more advanced test will take around 5 minutes. It will tell you to raise the volume higher or lower. Click on these keys until you're no longer able to hear the sound. So it will try to test the limits of your hearing at different frequency levels and then create another custom EQ specific matching to that. So there's a more advanced mode of EQ that will do a true hearing test and then again push that one over to the headphones if you prefer it. For lack of a better phrase, really brought the music to life and I think brings out the full potential of drivers and headphones, which is already quite good, but just kind of lifts it up a notch. Although one thing I will say here is because the app is made by a third-party company specializing in the tuning of sound and not in the production of the hardware itself, the app doesn't give you the ability to change things like the controls. And that is one area where the integration is still not quite as tight because we're looking at two different parties that are making this product possible, basically. So now talking about the experience in a bit more detail. Again, the sound is truly excellent, although they look, again, very similar to the Tronsmart Apollo Bolds. And in a side-by-side comparison with the SoundID tuning finished and turned on, these do sound better in terms of having more dynamic sound, and because I prefer more punchy sound as well, after doing the hearing test, I was able to really emphasize that and give it a huge punch in terms of the drum beats and EDM tracks, but at the same time doesn't sound muddy or distorted and still gives plenty of detail in the mids and trebles. Now in terms of the active noise cancellation, they also do make a difference, and when it's flicked on, you can definitely notice a decrease in fan noises and engine sounds if you're in a car. I would say it's around 70% effective, so not quite to the same extent as, say, a pair of Sony's, but for wireless buds, they are already very good. In fact, I would say they rival what the Soundcore Liberty Air 2 Pros, as well as what Apple AirPod Pros can deliver. That is more or less it as far as our hands-on review review of the Monolith by Monoprice TWS wireless buds, which are a premium pair for them. Even though at $100, it's still significantly cheaper than the AirPod Pros and other more expensive brands, but really what brings these to life is the companion app, along with quite effective ANC for a pair of buds, and very good controls, and excellent battery life even for 10 hours on a single charge for the buds themselves is on the longer side of the spectrum, which is great to see, coupled with a very good construction quality for the case. I think that these are an excellent pair to consider overall. So if you're interested, you can check out more details in the links down below, but for now that's been our video. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. It's been the Monolith by Monoprice wireless buds.